The first drop of blood landed on the white clinic floor before anyone even realized the stranger had collapsed. Within seconds, every patient fled in panic, convinced that violence had followed him through the front door. Only one young medical volunteer stayed where she was. While everyone else ran from the wounded man whose cold eyes carried the weight of countless terrifying rumors, she knelt beside him without asking who he was, pressed trembling hands against the deep wound in his side, and fought to keep him alive. She had no idea she was saving the most feared Mafia boss in the city. She had no idea that only a few hours later, after waking from surgery, he would utter 5 words that would change both of their lives forever: "Bring me that woman." If you believe kindness can change even the hardest heart, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who still believes in second chances, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community that celebrates hope, forgiveness, and humanity. Clara Whitmore had never imagined that compassion could become dangerous. At 28, she worked as a volunteer nurse in a small community medical center on the edge of the city. The clinic served people who often had nowhere else to go. Some were homeless, some were immigrants trying to build a better future, and others simply could not afford expensive hospitals. Clara believed every human being deserved care regardless of wealth, appearance, or reputation. Her late father had spent his entire life teaching that mercy should never depend on someone's past, and after losing him to illness years earlier, she carried that lesson into every patient she treated. The wounded stranger arrived during a bright afternoon as sunlight poured through the clinic windows. His expensive clothes were soaked with blood, but his posture still carried remarkable strength despite the injury. His face remained calm while everyone around him panicked. Clara noticed something unusual. Instead of asking for help, he seemed determined to remain silent, as though revealing his identity would place everyone around him in greater danger. Ignoring the fear spreading across the waiting room, Clara focused only on stopping the bleeding. She cleaned the wound, stabilized his breathing, and helped the emergency physician prepare him for surgery. Throughout the entire procedure, she never once asked his name. To her, he was simply another life worth saving. Only after several dark luxury vehicles surrounded the clinic parking lot did everyone understand who had been lying on the operating table. Men wearing tailored suits rushed inside with expressions that terrified every employee. Their movements were disciplined rather than chaotic, and every person seemed to answer to an invisible chain of command. The clinic director turned pale when one of them quietly revealed the patient's identity. The injured man was Victor Callahan, a figure whispered about across the city with equal measures of fear and mystery. Newspapers described him as untouchable. Law enforcement rarely managed to prove anything against him, yet stories about his influence reached nearly every neighborhood. To some, he was a ruthless criminal. To others, he was a silent benefactor who secretly funded shelters, orphanages, and medical charities while hiding behind an empire built on violence decades earlier. As word spread through the clinic, Clara's hands began to shake. She replayed every moment in her mind, wondering whether she should have acted differently. Then guilt washed over her. She remembered her father's words again. A nurse does not choose who deserves treatment. A nurse simply saves lives. Several hours later, Victor regained consciousness. The room remained silent except for the steady rhythm of medical monitors. His trusted associates waited anxiously for instructions. Instead of asking about business, enemies, or security, Victor spoke only one unexpected order. "Bring me that woman." The command echoed through the room. Many assumed Clara had somehow offended him. Others feared she had seen too much. Rumors spread through the clinic so quickly that several employees begged her to leave before his people found her. Clara considered running. But fear could not erase her belief that every situation deserved honesty. When Victor's security team politely escorted her to his recovery room later that afternoon, she entered expecting anger. Instead she found exhaustion. Victor looked older than the frightening stories had suggested. The scar across his shoulder hinted at years of surviving battles few could imagine. His eyes carried something even heavier than authority. They carried loneliness. He thanked Clara for treating him without hesitation. It was the first sincere gratitude many of his own associates had ever heard him express. Victor admitted that nearly everyone who recognized him either wanted something from him or feared him. Clara had done neither. She had simply seen an injured human being. That simple act unsettled him more than any enemy ever had. Clara politely explained that compassion should never depend on reputation. Good people make terrible mistakes. Terrible people sometimes long to become better. Medical care could never become a reward reserved only for those society approved of. Those words remained with Victor long after she returned to her duties. Over the following weeks, mysterious donations began appearing at the clinic. New medical equipment arrived without explanation. Children's medicine cabinets were fully stocked. Broken examination rooms were renovated. Elderly patients who could not afford treatment suddenly discovered anonymous bills had been paid. No one officially connected the generosity to Victor. Clara quietly suspected the truth. Meanwhile, Victor found himself thinking about someone who had treated him like an ordinary man rather than a powerful figure. For the first time in decades, he visited the clinic without bodyguards waiting inside. He spent several afternoons observing families receiving care, children laughing despite illness, and exhausted volunteers refusing to give up on strangers. He slowly realized something painful. Power had earned him obedience. Money had earned him influence. Fear had earned him survival. But kindness had earned Clara something he had never possessed: trust. That realization became the turning point of his life. Unfortunately, not everyone welcomed the change. Several ambitious members of Victor's organization believed compassion would weaken his authority. They had built their lives around intimidation and profit. Charity threatened everything they understood about leadership. Without Victor's approval, they secretly organized operations that harmed innocent local businesses while using his name to spread even greater fear. When Victor learned what had happened, he stood before dozens of loyal followers beneath the bright afternoon sun inside one of his warehouses. For years they had obeyed every order without question. Now they witnessed something unimaginable. Victor publicly dismantled the very network that had made him feared. Illegal operations were shut down. Families forced into silence received financial compensation. Community organizations previously ignored suddenly received support. Many associates walked away, convinced their leader had become weak. Others remained because they finally saw strength that did not require violence. Clara watched the transformation cautiously. She refused expensive gifts. She refused personal favors. She reminded Victor that redemption could never be purchased. It had to be lived every single day. Months passed. Victor kept returning, not as a feared visitor but as a volunteer. At first people hid from him. Children avoided him. Parents whispered. But slowly something remarkable happened. An elderly veteran recognized Victor helping repaint the clinic fence during one warm afternoon and quietly thanked him. A single mother watched him carry heavy food boxes for struggling families without seeking recognition. Teenagers noticed that he spent weekends repairing playground equipment instead of traveling in luxury. Trust did not appear overnight. It grew through hundreds of small choices. One afternoon Clara found Victor sitting alone outside the clinic watching children chase one another beneath the summer sunshine. For a long time neither spoke. She simply noticed tears resting quietly in the eyes of a man once believed incapable of regret. He finally admitted that he could never erase everything he had done. Some wounds remained permanent. Some families would never forgive him. Some mistakes would always belong to his past. But perhaps his future could still belong to someone else. Clara smiled gently because that was the first truly honest thing he had ever said. Years later the clinic expanded into a modern medical center serving thousands of families each year. No grand statue stood at the entrance. No wealthy donor's name covered the building. Instead, a simple plaque carried a single sentence: "One act of kindness can interrupt generations of fear." Visitors often asked about its meaning. Clara would simply smile without explaining the entire story. She understood that true compassion never sought applause. Victor eventually disappeared from newspaper headlines. Not because he had become more powerful. Because he had quietly stepped away from the life that once defined him. He spent the rest of his years funding education, rehabilitation programs, and free healthcare for neighborhoods that had suffered because of the choices he once made. Many people never knew his full story. Others refused to believe someone like him could change. Clara never argued with either group. She had witnessed the transformation with her own eyes. She knew redemption was rarely loud. It happened through countless unseen decisions repeated day after day. Before this story comes to an end, tell us in the comments, do you believe one genuine act of kindness can completely change a person's life, even someone with a dark past? Your thoughts may inspire someone else who is struggling to believe in hope today. As the years passed, Clara often remembered the frightening afternoon when blood stained the clinic floor and everyone else chose fear instead of compassion. Had she walked away like the others, countless lives might never have been changed. She did not heal the world in a single moment. She simply refused to let hatred decide who deserved help. That one decision echoed through families, neighborhoods, and future generations. It proved that while kindness cannot erase yesterday, it can build a better tomorrow. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is not the one who commands power, but the one who chooses mercy when fear seems easier. And sometimes the greatest miracle begins with nothing more than one wounded stranger and one ordinary person brave enough to care. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Thank you for being part of our family and our community, where every story reminds us that hope, forgiveness, and compassion still have the power to change lives.